episode of Fueled by Craft. Getting right into the game, man. Duke does defeat the Kansas Jayhawks 78-66. It was at a neutral ground out there in Madison Square Garden in the Champions Classic. Honestly, just initial reactions. I was really impressed by the performance from the team without arguably the best player in college basketball in Darren Peterson. Just to get into some box score things real quick. Cam Boozer had 18 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists. A really good passer. He does a really good job at, creating the fast break. Kind of Kevin Love-ish. Not saying he does it as good as Kevin Love at UCLA or just throughout his entire career, but he does a really good job at starting the break. Isaiah Evans, 16 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists. And Caden Boozer, 7 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists. So those are the stats for the bad guys. Cam Boozer, I honestly thought he would have a bigger impact on his game. Now I'm seeing people say that this was a bad game. I don't think this was a bad game. 18-10 is a very effective game. Now, he shot 7 for 17. Would he have liked to shot better? Of course. But I think that's just a testament to the strength of KU's defense. Isaiah Evans is taking that second-year leap as a sophomore. Hit some really big threes, especially to end the half. They drew up a play where he faked like he was setting a pick and actually popped out instead of cutting. Got Rosario, but he's doing a really good job of year 2. And the slept-on MVP for this game, I honestly think, is Caden Boozer. It was at a point in that game where KU got it down to constantly was getting it down to 5 points, chipping it away to 5 points. Had a point in the game where it was down 3 points. And Caden Boozer, I feel like those 7 points came in that stretch where KU was really battling. So he did a really good job at keeping Duke afloat when it looked like KU was battling back to take the lead. So the Boozer twins do a really good job. And like I said, Isaiah Evans were the top 3 performers for the bad guys. Getting into the box scores for the good guys, got Trey White, 22 points, 9 rebounds, 4 assists. Melvin Council, 15 points, 6 assists. Majority of those points coming into the second half, but I really liked how he was able to, shake it off. I think he started 1 for 8 shooting from the field in the first half, but did a really good job second half, getting aggressive, getting downhill. And I think once he understood that, that worked and he saw a bucket get in, he gained his confidence back. And Flory had a really good game, 14 points, 6 rebounds. A common theme for this KU team, we are super aggressive on defense and we do a really good job defensively as a team, but we got to do a good job at playing defense without committing fouls. Flory, Bryson Tiller, and Trey White were all in foul trouble today. This is the second game this year where Bryson Tiller has fouled out of 5, so he's got to fix that, but I think that's something you can clean up with him just being so young. But he did a really good job at being aggressive. Flory, like I said, it was a long point in that game where he hit the bench. It's like he got buried on the bench. That's probably one thing out of this game that I don't agree with Bill Self. A game of this magnitude, we were up 5, 4, 6 points, which is honestly, can be turned over in just a second going against a team like Duke. But I think when you're up or have the advantage or even fighting back, I think it's important to have at least Flory, Trey White, or Tiller on the floor at all times. It was a point where all 3 of those guys were on the bench, and I feel like that's where Duke had its best run. We couldn't really create points. That was the whole El Marco Jackson stint. You can watch my last video to see my opinions about him. But it just didn't make sense. I understand you're in foul trouble, but I think at that point you kind of just got to lean on your guys and trust your guys, especially guys like Trey White, who was a senior and can understand the magnitude of this game. Sticking on the topic of Trey White, he did a really great job. 22 points, 9 rebounds, 4 assists. One question going into this season, at least one question I had was, who would be that third guy? We all knew DP. We all expected Florida to take a leap, but we were kind of looking for that third guy who would emerge as a scorer for us. I labeled Bryson Tiller as my X factor for the team, and I still do think that. But I think it's pretty clear that Trey White has become the third guy to this equation. Did a really good job at controlling the ball, initiating the offense, something that I wasn't really familiar with him. I knew he could handle the ball, but he was definitely on the ball a lot more than I expected this game. He's 50% from the floor this year. We'll take that every day of the week. He's got at least 9 points in every game so far this year. Outside of his offense and obvious scoring ability, one thing that I really like about Trey White is he keeps the ball alive on offense. Good rebounder, but a really good offensive rebounder. A lot of possessions where KU got second chance points because of him. And he's a hustle guy. He was guarding Boozer while also being the lead guy in our offense. So he was kind of everywhere. Did a really good job on both ends of the floor. And he kind of reminds me of like a Kelly Oubre, Jalen Wilson variant, some guys who played for the Jayhawks in the past. Trey White did a really good job and had a really impressive performance against a top 5 team in the nation. My second takeaway from this game is Kansas is legit, and honestly, I think we're underrated. I felt like all week on Twitter, all I seen was Kansas is losing to Duke by 50. Kansas is about to get blown out. We have no chance. And this is coming from KU fans. And one of my biggest pet peeves as a fan is I understand being realistic, and I understand, having certain expectations for your team. But I mean, they was talking about this team like it was a D3 team. Like it's not 5-star prospects on this team. Like it's not accomplished collegiate players on this team. Now I understand we weren't favored. Obviously the spread was 11.5. So Vegas had it to where, you know, it was a pretty obvious winner. But I always thought we had a chance, and I think we proved it with this defense. Squad did a really good job fighting without DP. And the most impressive part about keeping things close is we did it without our best player, and then our next 3 best available players in foul trouble, like I mentioned earlier, with Trey White, Flory, and Bryson Tiller. And a slow first half from Melvin Council. So all those things taken into account, and you look at the final score of this game, I think KU was in really good position. And a lot of people honestly believe KU probably would have won this game pretty easily if DP would have played on the court. When DP gets back, I think it'll be a smart idea to bring Dawson and Rosario off the bench. Dawson was already coming off the bench. I think this team would really benefit from a guy like Rosario coming off the bench. A guy that plays hard, high energy, high effort, and a guy who can knock down the 3-ball. Now, it wasn't falling this game, but a good thing to take away from it is, you know, Jaden Dawson and Rosario were at least taking the shots. Now it's just about making them. They look confident, and I think the game will just become a lot easier, you know, once DP gets on the court. The team got really aggressive. They took initiative. I feel it was a game to not have DP in. As crazy as it sounds, this is one of the better games, at least to a measuring stick, to see, you know, where this team is without DP. And like I said, did a really good job at being aggressive, stayed alive majority of the fight, and it was honestly a fun watch. Looked like one of those 2010 Bill Self KU teams, really competitive, and I have a lot of confidence in this team, you know, once we get healthy. And my last takeaway is, like I mentioned earlier, defense. KU has and I'm not comparing them to OKC, but they have an OKC type defense to where almost everybody can switch. You got a lot of long, lengthy, athletic defenders out there, guys who can match up on, you know, almost anybody on the court at all times. And guys like Trey White, like I said, he had 22 points, but he was also on the other end guarding Caden Boozer. Bryson Tiller did a really good job down low. And Melvin Council is a really active defender. And Dawson actually did a really good job at defending and being aggressive at trying to get the ball. Rosario, a really good defender. So I think once that all comes together and we learn how to play defense without fouling, learn not to be too aggressive, but aggressive enough, and just get our rotations together, I think, you know, that'll just really pose. I think that'll be our identity going forward. It was a lot of fouls, a lot of cheap fouls. I didn't agree with a lot of them, but honestly, a lot of them were self-inflicted fouls, like just being out of our spots and guys having to rush back and making them, and which caused them to make, you know, the wrong decision in that moment. And I'll make a video later in the week as I watch the game over again and give a more in-depth analysis of the game. But this is kind of just my initial thoughts after watching it. Let me know what you guys think. Like I said, Duke was a really good team. This game just showed how flawed the rankings are with how close KU kept it for majority of this game. Let me know some bright spots you thought about this KU team. Appreciate you guys for watching.